Going to take item F6 now, which is the Commissioner Hagan's item, report on the Bloomingdale and Lithia Pinecrest Road mixed-use development.
Board members, as we heard during public comment, nearly on a daily basis, we hear from concerned citizens in Bloomingdale about the proposed development that will be constructed in the Bloomingdale Lithia Pinecrest area. We've heard about their concerns from loss of quality of life to increase traffic congestion on failed roads, to pedestrian safety due to the library, school, and ballpark all in the area, as well as school overcrowding. Their concerns are valid, and I empathize with the community and want to help in any way that we can. The community feels frustrated, as we heard this morning, feel betrayed, and that we are turning our back and refusing to help them. While this is not the case, the unfortunate reality is that we are legally limited in our ability to prevent this development from occurring. We have received a legal opinion from the county attorney stating that we cannot intervene in the process. This has been disseminated, and yet we're still being asked, why are we not assisting the community? So this morning I'd like to do a couple of things. Number one, I'd like to get an update from staff on what we're doing to make the project information readily available. I also want to ask the county attorney to again clarify and provide any legal options that we have. And then third involves the prop share contribution that the developer will ultimately make. And it's my understanding that statutorily the prop share contribution does not have to be invested in the project area. But the motion that I'm going to make at the end of all this is essentially to ensure that the developer prop share transportation contributions are dedicated to improving the immediate vicinity. So that's the motion I'm going to make at the end of this. So I don't know. Did you have a presentation? I wasn't aware of that, but not against it.
It's very brief if you want to hear it. If not, we can just go straight to it.
Well, why don't we go first with, I don't know if it's communications or who can answer. If you can give us an update on what we're doing to ensure that the information is becoming readily available to the community.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lori Hudson with Communications and Digital Media Services. At the request of administration, we began working very closely with Development Services, the County Attorney's Office, Community Affairs, Neighborhood Relations, to begin to communicate the current status of this project out to citizens in the area. We've done this through a number of different means, whether it was phone calls, answering citizen requests through email, also working with Wanda to get out information to the community associations. We've been working with local media. Because of the large nature of the files for the project, we established a file protocol FTP site where we put that out to citizens to let them know where it was and how to access it and to see the current information. We've sent out roughly about 6 different updates since February 28th. Each time as we've gotten new information, we've put that out, and we've provided consistent messaging all along with those updates. That's where we stand currently. There is also a web page for this project, and it is up. In fact, if you go on site, you can find it very easily.
Okay, thank you. And I believe the web portal was at the direction of the board. I know that my office has sent out a number of emails, as I know Commissioner Higginbotham and Commissioner Beckner as well. Mike, I guess, come on up. A couple questions that I have, and if it's not addressed in what you're going to present, please do. How will the increase in traffic be addressed, and what is the developer's role in its mitigation, if you can answer that? And secondly, what are the next steps in the process? So I don't know if that's in what you're going to show.
It kind of was, but I can just answer your question.
Okay.
There's two components to dealing with his traffic. There's his site access improvements that he will make, and then there's concurrency or prop share. Initially, the preliminary plan approval happened back in February. And just let me go real quick to this slide. Back in February, the preliminary plan was approved, and that's an administrative process. As part of that, they agreed to certain site access improvements, turn lanes, a signal when warranted, things like that. Beyond that, the next step is for them to go through the construction plans. That's really at the developer's discretion when they submit. You know, they could submit tomorrow or they could submit in, 3 months. That's really up to them. And then beyond that, when they do that, they have to deal with their prop share or the old concurrency. But prop share is typically how most developments go now. They have submitted a draft prop share report, going through some of the calculations. The staff is still reviewing it, and we should have comments out soon. So that is not finalized yet, but essentially the way the prop share works is they look at the existing traffic on the road, and if there's any deficiencies on the road, they show that as a county responsibility. In other words, they can assume that those are in place with the county being responsible for that. Then they add their traffic on top of that, the traffic generated by the site, and whatever roads fail at that point, then they add those to the model, and those are the improvements they're responsible for. They run through a series of calculations, and it comes up with a number, a dollar amount that equates to what they're responsible for. Then at that point, we'd take a prop share agreement to the board for approval. They have not filed a formal prop share application at this point, but when I'm sure once their report gets some feedback, they'll be ready to formally do that. So that's kind of the status of where we are today.
Okay. Anything else you need to?
Well, the only other thing you mentioned before about not being required to spend the money like adjacent to the site or something. When we bring the prop share back, if you'd like, we can bring back maybe a couple options for projects to spend it on or something, in the vicinity that, then the board can decide where to put the money.
Okay. That's going to be essentially my motion. Okay. Thank you. Chip, are there any, we keep hearing that, again, feeling that community is not being represented or that we should be intervening, we should go out and meet with them. Are there any legal options available? And I also remember we received an email or two on the initial legal opinion that made it, that was interpreted by some that it allowed us to still intervene and do some things. So are there any legal options available to the board and that would allow us to intervene and reconsider the zoning? And then secondly, what are the likely consequences if the county intercedes and prevents the project from moving forward?
Okay. Thank you. Essentially where we are is that the present zoning, the uses which we're discussing, the big box, the multifamily, have been in this zoning district since 2003. That's when we talk about rezonings, that's the kind of change that would typically in a process come to this board. This board, not you individuals, but this board as a body, put those uses into place in 2003, and the applicant has come in, relied on that, filed their applications. Under the Land Development Code, the rules that govern this process, those applications don't come back to this board. There's not a role or a step in that process for this board to act on those applications. If this board were to try to insert themselves, reach down in the process, or change the rules for the rezoning, for the zoning process and the approval process, or initiate a rezoning that would change what is available on the site for the property owner, there would be substantial legal ramifications for that action. There could be certainly a variety of different lawsuits could be filed. I'd rather not list out exactly what those causes of action would be, but there would be at least 3 or 4 different approaches that a lawyer could use to sue the county in that instance, which would potentially, if it could be proven, which would we deal with in court, but would be business damages, attorney's fees, other types of things, including loss of value of the property under the Burt-Harris Act or other legal remedies. So the commission's established the process back in 2000, I'm sorry, the process and the zoning districts back in 2003. There really is no option to change that now that the application is in. That is established. If the commission were to try to change that, there would be substantial penalties to the county that would be raised in court. So in terms of changing the scope of what can be done on the property now that the application is in, no, there's not really any options there. We have not been able to identify any legal options that the commission would have to reach down and try to change the process. The process is moving through the staff review, through the county engineer and the zoning administrator, and that's the appropriate process that was established in the Land Development Code.
Is there anything that can be done to stop the project from moving forward?
No, sir.
I know Commissioner Beckner initiated an item that we'll be discussing regarding the Land Development Code for future projects, but nothing can be done with the LDC involving this particular project?
No, sir. Any change to the Land Development Code would have to be treated prospectively moving forward. If the commission were to change the code and try to apply it to the pending project, it would be considered a retroactive application, which wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay. One thing I would like to do, and I'm gonna pass the gavel, is that we're hearing that many of the concerns involve traffic congestion and so forth. One thing that we do have some control over are the funds that will be contributed by the developer for or to mitigate the transportation issues in the area. So I would like to pass the gavel and make a motion for the board to dedicate all developer transportation mitigation funds from this project to the transportation improvements in the area. And then additionally, when the developer's agreement is brought forward for approval, that staff will also have specific recommendations on the best way for those funds to be used. And then in addition to that, during the budget process for the board to consider any funding shortfalls that may exist to address the needed transportation improvements.
Second.
So with that, Commissioner Sharp.
Second. Mr. Gormley, could you, I seconded his motion, but I also wanted to ask you to kind of go back over the last question that the Chairman just asked, because it was a question I've been asking my office. I've received the emails as well, and I'm glad that the citizens have an opportunity, some of the citizens, not all. And I was even going to pick up my daughter at school, and I was stopped by several administrators who wanted to ask me. I thought they were going to talk to me about my daughter, but they wanted to talk about this project. Everybody wants to talk about the project, and I appreciate it. And one of the questions was, how on earth did I do this? And I wanted to be very clear. This approval was made in 2003, the rezoning in 2003?
That's correct. In November of 2003, the rezoning was approved pursuant to rezoning number RZ03-1432.
How was it zoned?
It was initially zoned ASC1, and the zoning approval changed that to the TND zoning district that included a density intensity bonus that allowed increase in non-residential commercial entitlements up to 300,000 square feet, and a bump in the density allowed in the project.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat that slowly,
okay,
so that everyone can listen. Can you repeat how it was? It was an ASC1. It was rezoned in 2003 to allow what?
To a TND, Traditional Neighborhood Development Zoning District. As part of that zoning approval, it was granted a density and intensity bonus, which allowed it to get a higher level of commercial square footage and a higher level of residential density on the site.
So that zoning at that time would have allowed for this proposed project?
That's correct. Big box use was an allowed use in the zoning in 2003. That use didn't change in the TND.
Because I've heard many comments different from that.
The 2011 LDC amendment did not change any of the allowed uses.
Okay, let's repeat that again slowly.
Yes, the 2011 Land Development Code Amendment did not change any of the allowed uses or intensities of those uses.
It could not have retroactively gone back and changed what was approved in 2003, is what
Correct.
you're saying.
The uses remain the same, and the level of those allowed uses remain the same.
So the changes that were made in 2011 did not impact the decision that was made in, I'm saying it, repeating it, because it seems like it just is taking a while to sink in, and I want it to sink in, I want to be able to understand this. The changes that were made in 2011 did not impact the decision that was made by previous members of this board in 2003.
Correct. In terms of the uses and the intensity and density of the uses, the 2011 Land Development Code text change dealt with design issues for the site, or for the district really, but it did not affect at all the allowed uses or the level or intensity of those previously approved uses pursuant to the 2003 zoning approval.
That's a very important comment, and I want to, I wanted to hear that, and repeat the statement which you gave to us. Any attempt by the Board of County Commissioners or any individual commissioner to insert itself into this decision-making process would have the potential to create significant liability for the county and therefore should be avoided. And my office has been asking and has received the presentation which you presented, and one of the reasons why board members haven't been racing out to interject themselves in this is because we'd be sitting in a courthouse listening to this, and we'd be losing. So we have to be very careful about the actions that we take, because what we don't want to do on top of all this is to add cost to the county. Now, I would like to ask about the agreement that we're going to have, the developer agreement. Can we go back over and repeat what we might be able to do to help mitigate this?
Yes. Sorry.
Well, I don't know, right, maybe Mike Williams is in position. I don't know if he's in position right now to give specific improvements, and that's why I asked when the prop share agreement comes to us, and I don't know if that's next meeting or 6 months from now, it'll come with an amount associated with it, and the motion is to guarantee that that money is used to improve traffic congestion in the area, and when that does come back for discussion, staff will have recommendations on how that money can be used. I don't think he's in, and if he is, feel free to tell us now to what specific ways it can be used. I imagine with some of them there will be a funding shortfall, and that's why I'm asking that when we have that discussion, or that also in the budget cycle, that we would discuss any potential funding shortfalls.
Well, I just want to I want to close by my portion by stating that I do drive those streets, and I drive them at peak hours, and it's one of the frustrations I've had since I've been on this board with the growth and the sprawl and the overdevelopment. And this board, these members that I've served with I think have taken extra careful steps to try to protect the citizens when we've looked at projects, new projects. But I can also say, and we'll be asking at a future time, to look at all the rezonings which have occurred, which are sitting out there waiting for a better economic time, and they're going to, and we got this project, we've got a lot of other projects as well, which means there's going to be significant infrastructure issues that we're going to have to address for another time. But it's one which is one of the reasons why I have been stressing for quite a while that we need to be looking at our transportation now. I've had citizens in the past say, we're not squealing yet. We're not yelling yet about all the pain that some of us think's coming. Well, when you wait until it's just so bad that it's outrageously awful, it's too late. So we're going to have to be jumping ahead on the issue of transportation and getting ready to deal with these issues. But I feel for the citizens. I thank you for being here. I want to thank this chairman who stuck his neck out to even put this item on the agenda, and staff who has been diligent in trying to address the issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. Commissioner Beckner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the prop share agreement, from what I heard, if I understand correctly, when you come back with your recommendations, that's going to be a discussion in the capital improvements section of the budget process, or when would that be discussed?
Probably both.
What I was speaking to was when we bring the actual prop share agreement, was that we could define projects that the money could be spent on. The budget discussion will need to be part of the budget, you know, as we go through the budget discussions over the rest of the summer.
There's a distinct possibility that there'll be a shortfall in some of the projects. And so assuming that, I said, you know, let's also discuss those shortfalls during the budget cycle. I don't know if it would be when he first comes back with the agreement, but he'll have his recommendations at least at that point.
Okay. And with those recommendations, will there be an opportunity for community and public input on those specific projects? I know typically there are in the budget process, but one of my concerns is that if this has been an issue for those residents out in the community and they're dealing with traffic congestions and other infrastructure issues, I want to make sure that when we're trying to mitigate this, that they have input on those projects and they're able to give us feedback if those are appropriate projects for that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the board's option, but I would say we'd be glad to take some kind of public input. The community's been very engaged, as you know, so I'm sure when this agreement comes back, the community will be here and will certainly weigh in on what their just thoughts and desires are.
Well, I think the communication plan that Lori described will just continue to exist until this thing is resolved. So that would be the vehicle for routine communication, and then along the way, you know, formal public hearings and town hall meetings that could be arranged as well.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it doesn't get buried somewhere with our other budget discussions, and that it distinctively recognizes the mitigation that we're doing for this particular area as it relates to the agreement. So if staff can just make sure that that is very clearly separated out when it comes to agenda for us for discussion, and the public as well aware, I think we just need to make that happen. And the second point I just want to make, again, I want to thank all the citizens for coming out. We have received, again, all your emails, and believe me, we hear your concerns and we understand your frustrations. And I just want to send this invitation, as I have sent this out to many of our citizens, as you know, that we are going to be having a discussion moving forward on how to address the LDC, privately initiated LDC amendments at our June land use meeting. So I encourage you all to attend. I am also soliciting, as well as staff is soliciting, ideas from land use attorneys and other professionals on how we can actually improve this process. I know when I mentioned that staff, they kind of like gave me a little freaked out look, but I think there's a lot of great minds out here in this community. And so if there are professionals who have looked at our process the way it exists today and they have ideas on how we could improve this process and make it a better process, we are welcoming that input and feedback, and I would ask that you contact my office or any of the Commissioner's office with that feedback and input. Thank you.
Commissioner Merman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really sympathize with the residents, and my family has had homes across the street from where this development is going. My husband and I actually own a townhouse a little bit down the road, probably a block or two away, and it's a nightmare. The traffic. We have a very active ball field, we have an active Y, we have a lot of retail in the area, and quite frankly, it's just the traffic and issues and all that is just a nightmare. But I will go back to the hearing we had where we approved this, and I remember looking at the really cute little pictures that we were being sold on about this T&D and how it was going to look. It was going to look a lot like the Winthrop development, you know, down there at the other end of Bloomingdale at Providence. No big box, you know, have Publix grocery store or something like that. And I feel like we were, I don't want to say duped so much, but maybe we were a little bit about what the intent for the actual use of the property was going to be. But the rezoning hearing was in 2003, but when he brought this T&D back to us to show what it was going to look like, it did not have a big box store in it. And I think we would have had a lot more questions, and maybe we wouldn't be here today. But I don't know if we can communicate with the developer and tell them what our desires are, but I think it would, I mean, can we have communication with them?
I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend going through county staff that is reviewing applications if you feel the need to weigh in. But as I indicated, the rules are in place, and any direct or indirect effort to change those rules in the middle of the application is where we would have liability.
I understand that, and I look forward to working on the changes with Commissioner Beckner, and I know we're all kind of sticking our necks out here. I thank Commissioner Hagan for bringing it up, but it is very, very frustrating for citizens who work and have the American dream, have a home with their family and school, and then something comes in that really causes a major disruption. I think it's kind of sad. So anyway.
Commissioner Crist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, in the 2.5 years I've served on this board, I've seen all of us here be extremely receptive to issues like this and to communities that have found themselves in a similar situation. We have voted down a number of big box projects in the last 2.5 years that were frankly quite controversial, with threats of lawsuits and other issues. We're not afraid of doing that. We're generally very receptive to the people who come and show a concern in their communities. This was a problem that was created over 11 years ago. I don't know if anyone sitting up here was here then, but I know I wasn't. And you know, now you're asking us to go back and fix a problem that was created 11 years ago that could put us deeply into a financial, legal situation that everyone else in our county would look at us if we did that as irresponsible. So, I mean, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place here. And to the speaker that got up and made threats to the board, that is not a positive way to try to work out a problem, because you're threatening us over something we cannot do from a legal standpoint. And you're threatening us with a problem that was created by our predecessors. So please keep that in mind. I appreciate, you know, hearing from all of you. Unfortunately, I can't respond to you legally. One of my closest friends, I could say a best friend, lives in your community and has tried to lobby me on this issue, and I have not been able to even respond to him. And, you know, this is a very sticky situation, and we have to ask that you please work with us as we work through it.
Commissioner Higginbotham.
And I share the same concerns of my colleagues and the citizens that are here, and have had an invitation extended twice. Both times I've had conflicts, but at the same time have heeded our county attorney and the opinion that I requested and we all received on April 17th. And I'm glad you went ahead and put this on and that we've kept ourselves within the bounds of the statute. But last year when we last had this discussion, like you, Commissioner Merman, I remember David Singer's, the representative, the attorney for Redstone, and the pitch he gave. And it was maybe not inappropriate, but he certainly has put this board in an awkward position. And I would suggest and encourage the members of the community to contact Mr. Singer and get some more information from him. on what the intention is. At this point, we don't even know that the developer will file plans to build, and that time will expire, I believe, in August. But these are good preemptive steps, and hopefully the board will hear from the developer, Mr. Singer, and they'll reach out to the community and do what's right. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
That works, doesn't it? I'm going to be brief. You know, when we were in the legislature, those of us in the legislature, one of the things we always said was, don't pass bills and legislation that tie the hands of future legislatures. And it appears that's what's happened with this county commission. County commission 10, 11 years ago passed something to tie the hands of this future, this particular commission. And I'm going to ask, I'm not going to make a motion, but I'm going to ask our county attorney to look at statutes, or look at something that could possibly put into place that would prevent county commissioners from tying the hands of future county commissioners in these type of situations. There was nothing written in, if I remember right, in the legislature, a law saying doing that, but I think it was in rules per se. I know in the Senate we had it, that kept the senators from putting forth legislation would tie the hands of future senates. And I would hope that we could do something and look at something that can prevent this. I feel the pain that the citizens have. You know, I come from a district that many times the citizens are run over. They'll come and plea and beg and plea, and whether it's with the county or with the cities, and they end up being on the losing end. And I feel that frustration. But again, like the rest of them said, our hands are tied. But I'm going to ask Mr. Fletcher to at least look into something like that. I don't know if there's anything we can do, but at least we can start the ball rolling to prevent these type of things from happening in the future.
Commissioner Sharp.
Well, I think that I'm not quite sure, Commissioner Miller, if this is germane, but I know that Commissioner Storms on a number of occasions had attempted to address the issue of properties that were rezoned, and then as a result of the economic climate or whatever, the projects would just sit there for years and years and years, and she wanted to put a time limit. And I'm not sure what occurred. There was some, I know there was a lot of feedback, not all positive, as a result of that request, but we might want to look back at that as well and see what was the legal and result of her request. But that's one thing that she had suggested.
Well, in closing here, I want to thank all the citizens for being steadfast in opposing this development and in stating your concerns. As I stated before, we empathize with you. We're trying to do everything we legally can to be of assistance. The one area where we clearly can involves improving the traffic congestion in the area, and that's why I came forward with the motion here. I'm going to restate it, is that the board agrees to dedicate all developer transportation mitigation funds from this project to transportation improvements in this area. And when the developer's agreement is brought for approval, that the staff also provide specific recommendations on the best way the funds can be used, and that during the budget process we would consider any funding shortfalls that may exist to address the needed transportation improvements. So that's the motion.
Okay. This motion on the floor by Commissioner Hagan, seconded by Commissioner Sharp. Okay. Any further discussion? Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 7-0.